Friends, I do want to invite you to move closer. Our storyteller tonight is very nice. He does not bite. And we have this lovely circle up front. Come, get closer. For those of you who are joining us on Facebook, hello to you, and we're going to be starting in a few moments. Wherever you want, but you have to come be in the circle. You can sit in the back row in the circle. That's okay. The sound is so much better in the sanctuary part. We're going to wait just a few more moments. Let people come in. Welcome. Good to see everybody. So does anyone have their matzo balls ready yet, or has the cooking begun?
Is the brisket in the smoke?
Is the brisket, yes. My big confession of the year is that I have not had an oven for 6 months. It broke and I can't get the part, and Sears hates me, and so I'm like calling friends, could I bring my brisket over just to stick it in your oven for 4 hours?
I just arranged today for Rosh Hashanah to have my house and their brisket.
Nice. That's the way to do it. Have them bring the food.
See, I should sit down there for this part.
I'm going to once he begins.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
that's it. I just figured we'd wait till
A few minutes past.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
I figured we'd give it to him at 6:40 to let people come.
And just in terms of game, s'mores, everything.
7:30-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's earlier.
I just wasn't sure if it was on live.
We have lights outside, so it should be fine. And a big fire pit.
I remember the fire.
It's for the sacrifices. Exactly. We have a pet Havdalah where we invite people to bring their pets. And, we pet biscuits and things for them. But one year we had a farmer who brought a goat. It's like, the goats got really nervous around us. It was very funny. You're all very quiet and well behaved. Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I'll make some big sounds.
That's good.
Won't scare you guys, man.
we will begin.
Okay.
Well, since you're all so well behaved, I think we'll begin. Friends, it's so nice to welcome you here as we begin really entering the Holy Day season. And we're joined this evening by storyteller Gerald Fierst, who is one of America's most acclaimed storytellers. As a performer, he has appeared throughout the U.S., in Europe, and in Asia, telling stories, original stories, stories from his own Jewish tradition, and stories from world folklore. As a writer and teacher, he's worked for school systems and universities across the U.S., leading workshops for teachers and students in writing and performance. He has served as a co-director of the Mid-Atlantic Storytellers Gathering, as a member of the board of the New York Storytelling Center, and as artistic director of the Jewish Storytelling Center at the 92nd Street Y in New York City. Fierst has been a featured teller and ghost storyteller at the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee, a storyteller in residence at the International Storytelling Center, and is online with a scholastic.com webpage, Meet the Storyteller. In 2008 to 10, he represented the United States through its embassy in Spain as part of the U.S. State Department's cultural programming. Fierst has released 4 audio tapes, Monstrous Mischief, Tikkun Olam, both Parents' Choice Silver honorees, Jewish Tales of Magic and Mysticism, and The American Spirit. He delighted us last year with his tales, and so we decided to continue the tradition again this year because the Holy Days are about our own stories and how we choose to write and tell them. So what better way to begin this season of reflection than with stories to amaze and guide us?
Great. Whoa. Thank you. I'm impressed. It's just wonderful to come back. Thank you so much for the compliment. And I'm going to start with midrash, two little midrash, which are kind of like riddles. So see if you can figure out the puzzle, okay? And the puzzle is, a midrash is from the story, a story from the story, right? So I'm going to tell you a little story, and I want you to tell me the answer to the riddle that I pose from the story. So the first story is about the destruction of the Second Temple. And in Jerusalem, when the Romans destroyed the temple and the city was burning, the Roman general ran into the temple and went into the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum, where the only time anyone was supposed to enter it was the high priest, the man in charge, right? And only at the high holy days. And at the high holy days, the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies, and only then would he say the unutterable name of God. Now you all probably know that nobody is quite sure what that is because there are no vowels, right? So if you try to read it, it's just unaspirated letters. You can't, there's no sound, right? So, my question is, what sound did that high priest make? When the Roman general arrived in the Holy of Holies, he pulled open the curtain and there was nothing there. And so what Cicero, the great Roman politician orator, said when he heard this story was, the Jews worship nothing, and their God is nothing. But I know that's not true. So what was the sound? What was the revelation? What was the name of God that was uttered in that space, the holiest space midrash. So it's both hard and easy. The breath of humankind is the name of God. And what that priest did was stand in the Holy of Holies and breathe. That's a good way to start the High Holy Days. So here's another midrash puzzle. And God said in the beginning, let there be light. But the sun, the moon, and the stars weren't created on the first day. It was the fifth day. So what was the light? Sun, moon, stars? No. It was the light of God, out of which everything else was created. And that's why we have 613 commandments that if you observed every day in the way you're supposed to observe, you would be constantly seeing and saying, thank you, God, for God is in everything. And that's a really wonderful way of also thinking about our world, whether it's when you plant a tree, or whether it's, for me, my little dog. I look at her and I go, you have such an old soul. Takes me to my first folk tale. An apple tree. We will eat apples and honey next week on Rosh Hashanah table. There once was a little apple tree that grew on the hills of Jerusalem. And every day, every night, that tree would look up at the stars and think, look at the heavens above. What a beautiful sight they are, those stars shining so bright in the night. Oh, how I wish I were a star that shone that way. But what am I? I'm only a tree. And then that tree had flowers. And the flowers were beautiful. But the tree looked at the flowers and said, what good are they? They'll fade away. But the stars, they're forever. Oh, how I wish I were like the stars in heaven, shining out so bright, filling the night. Oh, but what am I? I'm only a tree. And then the wind came and blew the apple tree's flowers all away. But in their place came fruit, apples, a rich crop, wonderful and sweet. But the tree, oy vey, what good are they? Old trees speak Yiddish. After all, these apples, they don't last. And they're heavy to carry. Why is the world so heavy? I wish I were light, like the stars at night. I'm just a tree. And then, well, the tree was right. You know what happens? The apples fell. But when they did, they broke apart. And you know what happens when that apple is looked at in the right way? Can you see what's there? you started to say, what does that look like?
A star.
That's right. That's right. Inside of every apple, there was a star. And so you see, that's how it is with all of us. The Spirit of God in everything. If only you look, sometimes, maybe not the way you usually do, you'll see the star that shines in everything. Well, there's a story that I promised you a loud noise. And it's about, well, let me tell the story and you'll see what it's about. A little town. See, my family, I don't know, each of you could tell where our families came from probably. My family came from the Zumuchova, which is probably in the Ukraine. I know my cousins wanted us to make a trip and try to go back to see if there was anything left. But I can remember even as a little boy, the Zumuchova Progressive Benevolent Association, my family having meetings with the Zumuchova Progressive Benevolent Association. And someday, the cemetery is there. There was a little town, a little shtetl town, a Jewish town called Pogoya. And it had a terrible problem. A werewolf had come to town. A Jewish werewolf. Who ever heard of such a thing? No, it couldn't be, everyone said. It must be from the gypsies. And so they went down to the gypsy camp. How could you bring a werewolf to town? And the old gypsy lady said, well, don't blame us. It's not us. It's that Prince Vanov. He's the problem. He's the werewolf. Go speak to the king. So the Jews went to the king, who grew outraged and said, how dare you accuse my son of being a werewolf? You Jews have a problem? Go solve it for yourselves. And so the Jews went home. They didn't know what to do. The werewolf was always showing up at services. People would scream and shout. Sometimes they'd faint. And then, one day, someone suggested that they go and speak to Rabbi Israel, the Baal Shem Tov. Now, the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the good name, he was a famous mystic, a famous rabbi. He's the founder of the Hasidic movement. He was a man who said that singing and dancing would be prayers that would go to heaven. And he could see into the future, and he could interpret dreams. Surely someone like that could tell you what to do with a Jewish werewolf. And so it was that they sent a delegation over the Carpathian Mountains to the home of the Baal Shem Tov. And lo and behold, the rabbi had foreseen that they were coming. He was standing at the gate of his house, waiting for them, saying, come in, you'll have some cake and you'll have some tea, and then you'll tell me the problem. No, Rabbi, no, this problem cannot wait. Hey, what could be so bad? It's a werewolf. A werewolf has come to Pogoya. Hey, that is a terrible problem. And then the rabbi's eyes rolled up into his head. He began to rock back and forth, and he went into a trance. They didn't know what was going on until suddenly the rabbi awoke. Ah! I know what to do. Yes, Rabbi, yes. What is the solution to the problem? You must welcome this werewolf as if he were one of you. Welcome him as if he were one of us. Rabbi, don't ask something like that. Don't you know what kind of monster this is? He chases the old men as they go to morning prayers. They have to lock the door and shut the windows tight to keep him outside. Ah, no, my friend. You'll see. Open your hearts, and it will all turn out for the best. And then the rabbi wrapped up the cake and sent the men on their way back home. And lo and behold, they arrived just at the Jewish New Year, of course. And so it was that day, as the rabbi mounted the bima to begin the New Year's services, he announced to all the assembled congregation, today we are going to invite a special guest to join our congregation. Today we are going to welcome the Werewolf Inn. No, Rabbi, no, not that, not that. But it was too late. Suddenly, up in the woman's balcony, there was a scream. Ah! And someone fainted. And there was the werewolf standing on the balcony rail. Ah! Everybody sat frozen in their seats, not knowing what to do. Only little Joe Lukinski, the bar mitzvah boy from the week before, had any sense of what that werewolf was like. Joey jumped out of his seat onto the bima and, looking up at the werewolf on the balcony rail, went, "Ah!" And suddenly the werewolf's eyes grew wide, his ears stood up straight, and from the balcony rail he leapt out into the air and landed on the bima right in front of Joey. Joey went, "Ah!" And the werewolf went, "Ah!" And then Joey went, "Ah!" And the werewolf went, "Ah!" And then they began back and forth, "Ah!" Until the whole congregation began to applaud, and Joey and the werewolf collapsed in laughter, rolling on the bima. And that's how the town of Pogoya welcomed in their werewolf. And from that day on, the fame of the werewolf spread across all of Poland. People came from far and wide to see the Werewolf of Pogoya. Sometimes the werewolf would arrive at Sabbath services early, and then he would hide inside the Holy Ark of the Covenant. He would crouch there silently, until at last the rabbi, about to begin the services, would see the werewolf's fuzzy tail sticking out underneath the golden fringe of the red velvet curtains. And then the rabbi would go, "Hello, my fellow Pogoyites. I think I see a wily werewolf about to give us a little shock." And then he'd pull the curtain open, and the werewolf would leap forth, and everybody would applaud. Oh, how they loved their werewolf. And then, one day, the werewolf was playing hide and seek with the children. The werewolf had hidden high in the roof beams of the synagogue. And as the children searched for him, the werewolf lost his grip and fell flat on his back. Little Joe Lukinski ran out and took the kippah that had fallen from the werewolf's head and put it back on. Don't move, Joe," he said. "You'll hurt yourself worse." But there was no worse that werewolf could hurt himself. By the time the rabbi arrived, the werewolf was having trouble breathing. The rabbi leaned over the werewolf, and the werewolf looked up at the rabbi and, reaching forth, said his first and only words. He said, "Thank you. Thank you for the cheese." Thank you for the cheese? That's what the werewolf said. That's what everybody heard. Thank you for the cheese. But it made no sense. What do those words mean? What kind of words is that for a werewolf to say on his dying breath? That night, everybody gathered in the synagogue. For after all, where do you bury a werewolf? Could a werewolf be buried in a Jewish cemetery? There was much discussion, much confusion, until at last the rabbi stood up and said, "My friends, I cannot tell you what those words could have meant. I can only tell you what the werewolf meant to us and what is in my heart. Was he not part of our community? And should we not give him a Jewish funeral?" And so it was that their werewolf was buried in the Jewish cemetery of Pogoya. And when word of this reached back over the Carpathian Mountains to the great mystic and scholar, the Baal Shem Tov, why, Rabbi Israel, he laughed and clapped his hands and began to sing and dance and praise God. For indeed he knew it had all turned out for the best. So the Werewolf of Pogoya, a good lesson for all of us that sometimes what we think is fearful is really a friend. In the course of telling stories, I have oftentimes found stories that are told worldwide, but Jews have lived all over the world. I mean, Jews, I remember my son had a friend from Shanghai at college, and I asked her what story she had heard as a little girl, and she began to tell me a Schlemiel story. And it was like, oh my gosh, I know that story. The stories had traveled from person to person on the Silk routes. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you've all heard of the famous Jews of China. There was a Chinese Jewish community, and there was the B'nai Israel. When the Portuguese came to Goya in 1608 or something like that, they discovered Jews who dated themselves back to Solomon. And they had lost almost all the liturgy, only the Shema was the liturgy that they remembered. But they were Jews, and they identified themselves as Jews from biblical times. So this is a very silly but lovely story, and I'm going to need your help. If you can help me, can you make sounds like animals? Can you cluck like a chicken? The adults might have to help with this. And can you moo like a cow? Moo. Moo. And can you like a goat? So it's sort of like playing music. When I need you, I'm going to go, and you join me, okay? Okay. So once there was a man, a blacksmith, who worked hard all day. And he would hammer and hammer and hammer away, hot and noisy as the work was. At last, at the end of the day, all he wanted to do was to go home and have some peace and quiet. But when he would get home and open the door, do you think he heard peace and quiet? No. He heard the sounds of his family. His wife in the kitchen bagging pots and pans. His old parents in their rocking chairs, squeak, squawk, squeak, squawk. And his baby cried, "Wah!" And there was too much noise. So he went to the wise woman of the village. And he said, "What should I do? All I want is peace and quiet." And she said, get some chickens. Chickens? Yeah, get some chickens. Bring a bunch of chickens into your house and keep them in your house for a week and tell me what you hear. Chickens in my house? Trust me, you'll see. And so the man went home and he got chickens and he brought the chickens into the house. And they flew everywhere. Chickens flying through the rooms of the house. But the man didn't care because he was sure that after this week he would finally have peace and quiet. And so all week long he worked with his hammer and the heavy metal, bang, 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 until at last the week was done. And on that day, he put down his hammer and he rushed back to his house and he threw open the door and he said, do you think he heard peace and quiet? No. He heard the sounds of his own family. His wife in the kitchen banging pots and pans. His old parents in their rocking chairs, squeaky, mucking for the week, week. The baby crying, wah! And the chickens flying. And it was too much noise. So he went back to that wise old lady and said, it didn't work. What should I do? And she said, cows. You need a cow. Bring a cow into the house. Keep the cow in the house with the chickens for another week, and then tell me what you hear. Ah! So the man went home and got a cow. He was sure this time it would work, and he brought the cow into the house. The cow watched the television. The chickens went flying everywhere. The man didn't care. He was sure that this time he would find peace and quiet. All week long, he worked with his heavy hammer against the hot metal. Bang, 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 until at last the week was done, and then he could hurry home and throw open the door and listen. Do you think he heard peace and quiet? No. Instead, he heard the sounds of his own family, his wife in the kitchen banging pots and pans, his old parents in their rocking chairs, squeak, squawk, and the baby crying, wah! And the chickens flying, blah, 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 and the cow watching television, moo. And it was too much noise. And so he went back to that wise old lady and said, it didn't work. What am I going to do? And she said, a goat. Get a goat. Bring a goat into the house. Keep a goat with the cow and the chickens. One more week and you'll see. You'll see. Tell me what you hear. And so it was. He went home. He got a goat. The goat ate the rug. The cow watched television. The chickens went flying everywhere. The man thought, please let me get some peace and quiet. All week long he worked with his heavy hammer. Bang, 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 bang. Until at last the week was done and he hurried home. He threw open the door and he listened. There was his wife in the kitchen. Bang, bang, bang. There were his old parents in their rocking chairs. Squeak, squawk, squeak, squawk. There was the baby crying. Wah! There were the chickens flying. There was the cow watching television. Woo! And there was the goat eating the rug. And it was too much noise. He went back to the old lady. He said, what am I going to do? And she said, you better clean your house. Clean your house and go to work. And when you come home, listen and tell me what you hear. And so he went and he threw the chickens out in the yard, took the cow into the barn, put the goat in the pasture, cleaned the house and went to work. Bang, 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 bang. Until at last the day was done. He hurried home, he threw open the door, and he listened. Do you think he heard peace and quiet? No, he heard the sounds of his own family. Oh, but this time he listened. And what he heard were the sounds of his own family and only his own family. And he never complained again. So, that story has passed around the world, but Sid Lieberman from Chicago told it, and I've seen it. There's actually a book of it as a Jewish story. So I can't be sure, but I'm pretty sure it certainly relates to us all. One of my favorite stories comes from a book of stories that my dear friend Panina Shram published. It's a Iraqi story. So the Jews of Iraq, Oriental Jews, right? Not Sephardic Jews, but Oriental Jews, right? There used to be a great Jewish empire in Central Asia. The travelers from the Holy Land to China, as they passed through Central Asia, at some point about 1600 years ago, convinced the king of a kingdom to become Jewish. Or he was impressed enough to become Jewish. And when the king became Jewish, everybody became Jewish. And so there was a Jewish empire in Central Asia. And there are descendants, or there were descendants in Iraq, of that tradition, of that culture. And they told a story about a very rich man who had ships that sailed the oceans. He had a fine house and a wonderful business and carriages and servants and everything that money could buy. But his most precious treasure of anything in the world was to make music. He had a beautiful violin, and he could take that violin down to the ocean and play. And when he played, the music was so sweet that the ocean waves rose up and danced. And one day, as he was playing his violin, up from the ocean waves, there suddenly came a bear. I'm not quite sure why this story makes it into a bear coming out of the ocean, but in Iraq, I assume a bear was as much of a monster as they could imagine. Out of the ocean came a bear. Ah! Play, man, play! And the man was amazed and terrified all at once. He played and he played and he played, and the bear danced and danced and danced and danced until the man couldn't play anymore. And in exhaustion, the bow fell from his hand. And then the bear looked at him. And then the bear coughed. And out from the bear's mouth came a silken purse that fell on the sand. And then the bear leapt back into the ocean and disappeared under the waves. Had it been a dream? The man rushed and picked up the silken purse, and it was heavy. He opened it, it was filled with gold. He ran to town. Was it real? Was it real? And it was. And so it was that every night the man could go to the beach and play his violin. And the bear would emerge and dance and cough. And there would be a silken purse of gold, of silver, of pearls. The man's wealth became greater and greater and greater. The man was like a king. And it was all because of the bear. And so he thought, this bear has given me, and I have given nothing back. I must invite the bear. I must bring him into my home. I must make him part of my family. And so the man went down to the beach with his violin and played. And the bear came forth, but now the man stopped the music and said, "Bear, bear, come with me. You are like my brother. I wish you to sit at my table and be part of my family." "Oh, man, don't ask that of me. Don't you understand? I am not of your world. If I go to your house, they will call me a monster. They will call me a beast. Man, don't ask this of me." Oh, no, my friend. No, I promise. That won't happen. I will be sure of it. I will send my servants away. I will send my family away. It will be you and me, and we will sit at my table like brothers, as friends. And so the man spoke with sincerity, and the bear agreed. And so it was said that the next day, the man would send everyone away and then come and get the bear and lead him to the home. And they would sit and talk and laugh and be friends. And it was done just that way. The day was dark and raining. The man didn't care. There was light in his heart. He sent away his servants. He sent away his children. He only permitted his wife to stay and warned her that she must be in the kitchen preparing the meals, but could not look at the guests that he was bringing to the house. And then he went and got the bear. He played his violin, and the bear came forth out of the ocean. Come with me, friend, come. And across the fields they went into the man's rich house, across the fine carpets, to a table that was beautifully set, filled with delicacies to eat. And they sat and they drank and they ate and they laughed. And the wife in the kitchen was listening and thinking, who is this who has come to my home? And why can't I see the face of this stranger? And so it was that when the man stood up from the table to go into the kitchen to get a tray of sweets for dessert, as he came back out to bring the sweets to the table, as he opened the kitchen door, the woman couldn't resist. She had to peek. And when she peeked, she couldn't see the table, but she could see the entranceway of the home. And on her fine carpet was the muddy footprint of a bear. Husband, what kind of monster have you brought into my house? What kind of beast is sitting at our table? Hush, wife, hush. But it was too late. The man rushed to the table and the bear was gone. And now the man grabbed his violin. He ran down to the beach and in the rain began to play. And out from the ocean emerged the bear. Man, man. Did I not tell you what would happen? But you would not listen. And yet I came with you. So now you must come with me. Follow me. And so the bear led the man deep into the forest, into the middle of the forest where there was a great rock. Push away the rock, man. The man pushed the rock away, revealing a great cave that descended into the earth with a stone stairway. Go down the stairs, man. The man descended into the darkness, into a great chamber with 3 iron doors. Open the first door, man. The man pulled open the heavy door, and there was a room full of gold. Open the second door, man. The man pulled open the heavy door, and there was a room filled with pearls and silver. Open the third door, man. The man pulled open the door, and there was a room filled with sharp blades, knives, and swords. Cut me, man. Cut me. No, the man said, you are my friend. I cannot cut me. I command you to. With trembling hand, the man took a sharp dagger and pulled it gently across the bear's paw. Blood came forth. You see, man, this wound will heal. But words make a wound to the heart that lasts forever. And with those words, the cave, the bear, disappeared. And the man found himself back in front of his own front door. Had it all been a dream? Had anything really happened at all? And then the wind came by, and on the wind he heard the voice of the bear. A wound in the flesh will heal, but words make a wound Lashon Hara, evil words. We don't always realize it. In our world especially, right? Where words are used so carelessly. It's always been Jews are the people of the word from the beginning, right? And that's why even just the letters of the alphabet are holy. Yaakov Ziv dreamt of America. He had heard New York City had streets paved with gold. He had heard that at night, New York City had so much light it was like heaven itself. He had heard that everybody in America was rich. He didn't even have to work. Oh, how he dreamt that he could go to America. He dreamt that if he could go to America, all he'd have to do all day was study Talmud and Torah. If he could go to America, he could pray every day for the Mashiach, the Messiah, to come. And then the world would be embraced with peace. Oh, how he wished he could go to America. But when, at last, they endured the long trip, he and his wife Sadie, when at last they managed to come to America, he found it wasn't like that at all. He found it was hard work in a laundry, carrying heavy loads, working the steam press. Until at last, as he grew old, the bundles were too heavy and the press was unmanageable. And at last, he had to just stay home. But then he could still pray. Pray for the Shekhinah. Pray that the feminine character of God would come to him. He could imagine that day. He could imagine that she would come and lift him up into the air, stepping along the stars, each star turning into a letter of the Holy Torah, a shower of blessings upon the world. He prayed for that day. And he thought his prayers could make something happen that wasn't even just part of his world. And one night, while he was asleep, as moonlight poured through the window, falling on the bedroom floor, beam upon beam, forming a layer of steps up into the heavens, his prayers came true. He heard the voice of the Sabbath calling to him. The spirit of the Shekhinah saying, "Come dance, come dance." And his soul rose up from his body, walked up into the heavens, towards the gates of paradise that he could see. At the top of the stairs, around him were sights wonderful and terrible, souls crossing bridges over pits of fire, cherubim, seraphim. He was almost there. He was just about to touch the gates of heaven, push them open. The gates of heaven were going to open for him and for all the world, and it had all come from his prayers, when suddenly he felt a shaking on his shoulder, a hand upon him going, wake up, old man, wake up. And opening his eyes, he saw the face of his wife, Sadie. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he saw the fear and pain and love contained in them. And he began to cry. And she began to cry. I thought I'd lost you. I thought I'd lost you. And then he rose up and took her in his arms. And he began to laugh. And she began to laugh. And then he began to cry, and she began to cry. And then he began to laugh, and she began to laugh and cry and laugh and laugh and cry. And then they began to dance, 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 dance in the moonlight, round and round and round, their laughter and crying becoming a song that rose up into the heavens and joined the Sabbath song of the Shekhinah, celebrating the love of husband and wife. I'm going to teach you one last story before we go and make s'mores. It's a sign language story. In American Sign Language, the language of the deaf, this is a K. And when you put a K across your chest, like a royal banner, it means king, king. Or this is Q, and so put a Q across your chest, it means queen, right? So you can say the words and do the signs with me. Go. I am the king or queen of me. I can become whatever I want to be. The sun and me are two of a kind. With our hearts, our imaginations, and our pride. Together, we shine, we shine, we shine. Okay, now we're going to do it one more time the hard way, because we're not going to talk. We're going to do it in silence. And as we do it in silence, we listen to the breath in the room, to the name of God. Imaginations and pride together tell. This is the old-fashioned word, Jewish. The more modern word is Torah scrolls. Jewish stories that shine and shine and shine. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. You certainly gave us a lot to think about as we enter the new year. And I promise you there will be no werewolves at Marlborough High School. We are beforehand. But if we encounter
My pleasure.